Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. My name is Rotimi Eitayo, and you are welcome to the Good Morning Education Show. This is a show that we promise to always come to you live every day, Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., as we discuss about relevant conversations, relevant issues, relevant topics that borders around and within the world of education. We bring together strong voices, experts in their own rights, that contribute several views according to their own level of understanding and their field of expertise to the subject matter to give a robust understanding, a robust perspective, and the right kind of picture to be able to help you to learn more, to be able to help you to grow, to be able to help us to push further to get the desired development within the education space and beyond the education space. And it's always a great time. We always say it's always a great morning on the Good Morning Education Show. And these times are interesting times. It's a period that really has brought us to be able to begin to look and take with respect to things and conversations that we need to look at as a people, as professionals, as stakeholders, as practitioners, and of course as a sector. And we're streaming from Lagos, Nigeria to West Africa to Africa and the entire world. If you're just joining us, we're excited that you're joining us. Please do let us know where you're streaming from, connecting from. Please let us know your name, your location. And if you're a first time caller, and sorry, if you're a first timer, please do let us know, indicate so we can ring the bell of blessing to you. And then, of course, if you have questions, do not hesitate to ask questions. We will be willing to address those questions and take them as much as we can during the time that we have during the show. And of course, even if you don't have questions, please contribute. Say something, even if it's on Facebook or YouTube, say something. Let us know you're out there. Let us hear your thoughts because we believe in learning together, sharing together, and ultimately growing together. Once again, my name is Rotimi Eitayo, and you're welcome to the Good Morning Education Show. And we started this week on an interesting note, and we began to look and explore several areas that probably we need to even think about, right? Especially when we talk about the current situation in the country where people are trying to speak up, trying to advocate, trying to drive for change, and we have been seeing the lives of people, different people come together and also protesting. And we decided to take a cue, understanding that it's not just enough to be able to be a spectator as history unfolds, but you need to also glean from that and take retrospect and begin to look at it and say, what does this mean when it comes to the area and the field of your domain? While we might not necessarily stand out there and begin to create a new version of what is going on, but there are things that we need to. And this is an opportunity where we can actually say it's time for us to talk about things within the education space because education in itself and as a sphere and as a sector is a critical sector and element in society that needs some level of development. And this is what we're trying to do in the show, to begin to take conversations step by step, to be able to raise awareness, raise consciousness. We did that last week. And then this week was a follow-up, and we started yesterday. And we began to talk about it. No, not just yesterday. We started on Monday. And we talked about raising standards, thinking about it, that there are things that we need to do. And there are areas and people that we need to focus on. And we started with raising standards for regulators, thinking about what regulators are, the role they play, the importance of regulators in society. And we took a step further to begin to ask ourselves questions. How can we raise standards for them, remembering that we had to state it to the public and we'll continuously state it that it's erroneous and it's inconsistent for you to say that standards are falling because standards do not fall. Standards are things that you uphold, standards are things that you measure up against. It doesn't fall. So when you say the standard of education is falling, that does not totally paint an accurate picture. And then we took a step further to even say that, what are the standards? We need to define the standards. And thankfully, one of our experts and analysts said that one of the things that we need to do when it comes to regulators is transparency. Transparency became a key factor, became a key word. And then we took a lot of conversation that was actually moving away from the surface and delving down deep into the matter. And we're able to see so many things. And I'm sure if you are not part of the show, please do not hesitate to go to my YouTube channel and check for the videos and have a replay, sit down, meditate on it, churn out this content and begin to reflect and begin to internalize, apply where it applies to you, and of course, share. Every regulator out there should actually see that episode where we talked about raising standards for regulators. And then yesterday, Tuesday, we're able to talk about raising standards, right, for teachers. We believe that, yes, of course, even though we took a break away from teachers for a day, but we cannot afford not to talk about teachers. And then they need to realize standards are actually things that should be raised for them as well. And when we talked about that, interestingly on the show, we're able to come through different angles. Number one, raising standards for teachers on their behalf, being able to carve out that standard base for the industry, but then raising standards for teachers as the individual teachers. And we're blessed to have Rhoda Odigbo in the building, and she was able to talk about a lot of elements: teacher distribution, teacher development. She talked about a lot of things, and of course, today we're taking the conversation a step further, and I'm joined by our analyst in the house, Titi. Good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Rotimi. Good morning, everyone. Um,
Morning. Great to have you here. Good morning, everyone.
the day had a sad undertone, but good morning.
Yeah, I understand. Good morning. It's such a challenging period for a lot of us. But then we're alive and we're grateful, and we have to do what we have to do. And it's part of why we're talking about raising standards for students. Raising standards for students. So I was just doing a little introduction before you joined us. And yes, so we're talking about raising standards for students, and I believe the others will try to join. Some people might not be able to have that appetite to, do a lot of dissecting because of heavy hearts, just right under our nose, just right some meters away from where I am, is the reality of what happened yesterday. And I know we'll still get back to that, but really, we're not having any headline conversations today. Just going straight to the meat of the matter. So, Titi, what are your thoughts? We're talking about raising standards for students.
It's I guess it's a bit hard to focus on the topic. Okay, but raising standards for the student. One will come at it. I think similar to the discussion of raising standards for teachers and saying what is the standard. The standard has changed from what we know it to be. The standard that we knew before was just more about, I would say, more like passing a grade or learning maths and science. But the standards have changed a bit, and I think it's important that everybody knows that the standard has changed from a knowledge-driven focus to a skill-driven focus. We've said it, and I think it's no longer news. And the future that is unknown, so nobody knows what the future of work will be like. But one of the things that is very clear is that children need to be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So it means that today we are using this kind of smartphones. Somewhere along the line, they might change. So you need to be able to unlearn that and relearn the new thing. That's really what's going to happen. Um, they're going to learn. We are using the internet now. We don't know what it's going to be like. We're riding cars, but we don't know what it's going to be like. So this key skill, which is what people have termed 21st century skills, are really what the standard of learning now is for the child. So it's really more about, can the child solve problems? Because technology will ensure that some typical jobs that we're looking at now would be automated. So it means that those jobs will no longer be the jobs that people are doing, and we've already seen that happening. I remember when I first of all started working, we actually used to have someone that used to sort out posts and sort out mails. But before long, technology was emails became a really big thing. So the amount of mails has significantly reduced, even in terms of things that were like accounting wise. Someone that used to do it, a lot of that has changed with accounting softwares. So what kind of jobs would they be prepared for? Nobody is really sure. So can they solve problems? Can they collaborate? Can they be creative? Can they think? Those are the things that are important. So when we're looking at standards, I find that we are still focused on teaching the child knowledge, driven by knowledge. And those knowledge are no longer important because all those things are available on the internet. When my son asks me for something I don't know the answer, I just tell him, please go and Google it. Google has the answer. I don't know it. I'm honest to say that I don't know it. And he goes online, he checks it. He can check as far, as wide, as deep as he wants. So that means he doesn't need that role I was taking. He really needs to know how to solve the problem. When he asks me for something, I'm like, think about how you can solve it. And there's most likely an app that can help you with this. There's most likely someone that has done it before. Let's do a search online. And that's really the new standards that we need to do. That ability to collaborate, that ability to do a lot of research, to find out answers for yourself and solve the problem. So standards in Nigeria, unfortunately, we are still very much driven by are still very much being driven by knowledge, acquiring knowledge, passing grades, rather than solving problem and really using technology, getting the children to really use technology so that they start being opened to the opportunities that are available. One of the things that this COVID lockdown exposed was that it exposed the fact that most people were not using technology in their schools. It's when our children were now forced to really use it that we now realize, oh boy, what have they been learning using technology? So we really need to get them using technology. I mean, with online learning, the school that my son is currently in, they're teaching them how to use Canva. They're preparing PowerPoint presentations. They're creating. They no longer do birthday cards. The physical birthday cards. All their birthday cards are now done either using Canva or PowerPoint, and everybody can prepare a birthday card for the other person. So they're really now really using technology, and so I feel that's really where we need to go to. I think I've been talking for too long. Let me just pause.
I can sense it in your voice, Titi. I don't know. The energy seems to be a serious drive. I was, but then of course, when we talk about raising standards for students, like you said, you need to define the standards, but also we need to understand the reality. I think we cannot leave our students any longer to be recipients of whatever happens just within the society or in the sector, especially in the classroom. I believe that we need to get them to now take their destiny in their own hands. And that's part of the reason for raising standards. Raising standards for students, I believe, is something that should create more avenue or routes for students to grow, to learn, to have expression, to be able to think. Because sometimes, some of the times when we talk about some things, and then maybe there's a question that comes and says, what do you think we can do about so and so? Or what do you think about this challenge in the country? Or what do you think about this particular? And then you find out that the quality or the ability to even be able to think right sometimes is difficult for these kids because of how they've been raised, how they've been taught, how they've been instructed. So in raising standards, right? I think one of the approach would be drive people to ensure that the kids are not just storage houses where you open the brain, you open the mind, and you pour. We need to raise the standards where they are now the ones who are processing devices, not as opposed to storage devices. I don't know whether you understand what I'm trying to say, Titi. I spoke on Saturday. Yes, I spoke at a conference in India, and the professor on the panel was asking myself and one of the speakers a question. And because of what I was speaking about the future of education, and he took that statement and it was drilling me, and I was answering. It was really drilling me, and he said something. He said, "Okay, for example." So we talk about the future of education. What about assessment? How do you prevent children from cheating, especially when it comes to online, doing this at home without being there in physical terms? And I tried to answer as to the best of my knowledge and ability. And I was explaining to the prof. And I said to him, I said, one, there are many options. We don't just say yes because there's a subjective approach to assessing people. There's a subjective, but there's also the formative assessment as well. And beyond that, I told him, I said, you know what, you can actually turn into projects. Projects can be a particular way of assessing knowledge, assessing learning, not just assessing, but also promoting an internalization of learning. I said, projects are there. Um, there are different avenues, but then I told him, I said, one of the critical elements that we need to embrace in Africa, and of course I told him because India has some similarities also that they need to embrace in India, is the fact that we need to begin to tilt towards what I call value-based education, which is not centered on just the knowledge, but the totality and the development of the being, meaning that we are raising people. So even if you're meant to learn or get to write exams and all those things, which is good, demonstration of knowledge and acquisition of knowledge. We want to take it a step further to the point where the students themselves understand that the virtue comes before knowledge. And that virtue is very critical at this stage where I don't need you to cheat. I can create an open book assessment. I need to understand your comprehension of the matter. I'm not competing between who is the better student than A and B. I'm making learning so individualized as opposed to seeing it as homogeneous in nature. Where, so let's welcome Eben and KK in the building. Good morning, Eben. Good morning, KK. How are you today?
Good morning, Eben. Good morning, KK.
Good morning, KK. Good morning, Mr. Rotimi. Good morning, Niger kids.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Eben, I'm
You have a
hearing
lot of
some.
background
Good
noise.
morning,
Yeah,
everyone.
hope
Are
you're
you
not
not
on
Is
the
it from
street,
my
people
side?
behind
Eben.
you?
I'm actually not on the street. I'm actually on the balcony, but just looking at what is happening here.
Please
And
stay out of the balcony, please. Please. My friend. Funny enough, I was thinking I was going to detour to his house that was day before yesterday. A bullet just pierced into their compound and just like 2 meters away from where he was standing. You know, so he wasn't on the road. He was in his compound, right? So you can
wow.
imagine that, and that was the Sue lyric, Titi.
Really?
Surulere, wow.
Yeah, it happened
Okay,
yesterday.
although Surulere, yesterday night in Surulere, there were actually some group of people at Surulere. And that is this popular comedian, Mr. Macaroni. I think that is exactly his street. Maybe they are trying to track him. That is what we actually saw online that yesterday. But they did not know where exactly the guy lives. So it actually shows how so many people are even monitoring some of our phone, the way we chat, the way we do so many things online. It's very worrisome.
KK, let's hear your voice, KK.
I'm here. I'm here.
So we're talking about raising standards for students, and we'd like to know your thoughts. We'd like
Vivian, you
to
might
know
need
your
to put
thoughts.
something on mute because of the background noise. Okay.
So, KK, do you want to
Okay,
share?
yeah. I mean, when you talk about so following from what we've been talking about, when you talk about raising standards for students, there needs to be, first of all, that's generally speaking, for the teachers, for schools, and then we need to be in a place where we are unafraid to actually let parents know that, you know what, your child is really not doing as well as you assume your child is doing, which is one of the major problems that we as schools face. Every parent believes that their child is a genius. Not saying that your child is not a genius, but genius is a process, you know. So before all children attain that stage, the child there.
Are you there, KK?
And then actually working with the children in the classroom, I find it really hard to, you know, get things done because that child is meant to be perfect, and you are being told you can't fail the child because if the child has to repeat or has to fail, there's a problem. Then the standards for the students are not going to be raised, and that's something that we need to address squarely. There needs to be that freedom of expression. Parents need to understand the fact that, look, teachers love your children and they actually want what is best for your children. So if they say there's an issue, then there is an issue. So again, it starts with the understanding that there needs to be, teachers need to know what they're doing. First of all, they need to know what they're checking. They need to know where the students need to be going. So there needs to be like an acceptable standard, like a benchmark, and it can be nationwide. Of course, there are all the international standards which we have. When the child goes and does international exams, they must, we're using international standards to benchmark the child in that regard. But then nationally, we need to have a space where we say, you know what, this is where we are. Yeah, so when you talk about raising standards, I think that's where we should start from, saying this is where we are and this is how we need to attain it, and then putting the structures or intellectual infrastructure in place to ensure that we can actually move children there via teachers who are strong in their content and in their areas of study. Thanks.
All right, I like that. Fantastic. So when we now want to take it a step further, of course, we know that when it comes to students, and they are that level that needs a lot of support. So when we talk about raising standards, we need to actually begin to look at the roles that has to be played for this to happen. And I was saying something before you joined us today that we need to look at it from different dynamics, that the students themselves, we need to raise standards for them as well, not just to raise standards to them in terms of the things we need to do so they can learn and all that. But we need students themselves, almost like saying for them to come of age, even though we are not asking them to deny the growth process. But I think that I remember there was a particular episode of the show that we had that Titi was analyzing something, and she was sharing a scenario where she had to tell her son, you have to be enterprising, and he started recycling stuff. We seem to have the opinion of a delayed reality for children, which the world has actually moved on many years ahead of that, where you don't need to be 18, you don't need to finish with university before you begin to think of something enterprising, before you begin to earn, which is a formative thing, it's a development thing, just like you talk about fine motor skills and all those things, for a child to be able to have social skills and social behavior. I think we need to also raise standards for children, not just to be socially inclined, but we need to raise standards for them to begin to think in a different way so that their level of independence is achieved earlier, looking at the scope of things. Yes.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. And yes, I do remember that episode where Titi was her son. And she was like, because he started collecting cans and asking people to bring cans and all that. So yeah, absolutely, I remember that. But you see, Rotimi, the thing with children is that, and I've heard this saying often enough, that as a school, as a nation, you can only rise above, up to those who are leading you. So for a school, for example, and for parents, that's why I'm bringing parents in. Titi is a parent. School didn't do this. Titi did it. You need to have teachers who are thinkers. If your teachers cannot think, then they cannot create thinking classrooms. And if you don't have thinking classrooms, then that already is potentially a problem, because the students will not be able to, they won't understand that they need to be thinkers. And that's the major problem that I see. We need to create thinkers in our classrooms. And the only way to do it is to have a pedagogy that enables thinking, right? So for example, when I'm teaching, I always ask the students, and that's where student voice comes in. I always ask the students, so what do you think about this? I need you to disagree with me on this thing I've just said. And some of them find it very difficult to disagree with me. Some of them do, immediately they started. But you see, increasingly, they're finding it easier to disagree with me. So for me, that's their voice. Hello?
Wow.
Hello? I think I went up.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Okay, I wasn't sure. So yeah, increasingly, we need to create classrooms that are thinking classrooms. That's the only way students even understand that they have a voice, that they can think, they can provide and prefer solutions. If our classrooms do not enable, and our homes do not enable thinking students, then they're not going to be able to do anything by themselves, to be honest with you. So it's almost in the space where we're talking about real life experiences versus classroom experiences. We need to build recognition in our classrooms. The students need to understand that, what happens in the real life, what I'm in the classroom are connected. With the classroom and what's happening outside are two very different things, and that's not the case. The more we do that, then you will actually begin to see that students are thinking. You will actually begin to see that even young students understand the fact that I have a voice. I can actually think, and I can actually do something different. And that's where the space of differentiation comes in, where you say, what, you can differentiate products. So let me give an example. In class on Monday, I gave the children a creative writing prompt. And I said to them, based on the protests that happened over the weekend, imagine that you had opportunity to meet with Mr. President, and you had...
Hello, KK.
Oh, we lost her, and it was getting interested. I like the creative writing topic.
I would have said, can I talk to you, Mr. President? I'll start a series on that.
I think she's coming back.
She's back. Network. We didn't say good morning, internet today.
Oh, where's Darling Jude?
Oh, wow. We didn't. And the children came up with so many different, just from me letting them know it's okay, create a dialogue. And they did. I mean, many of them were telling them, oh, how come children are said? I mean, it was the things the children came up with. And I didn't have to tell them what to do. I told them, choose the issues. But you see, when we refuse to let go of autonomy in our classroom as teachers, then you cannot create thinking students. It's impossible. The students, the standards are not visible to them. So they have nothing to attend to. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. KK, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
No, I think she's frozen now.
Titi.
Why? Because I said she's frozen. Okay, her internet is frozen.
I can't.
Oh my goodness.
I know Mr. Rotimi is actually laughing because that statement belongs to me.
Yeah, that's the Titi that you need copyright from Titi. Titi is the
She's the founder of it.
You're frozen. Your mic, you're on mute. Okay, so Ibe, let's
Then
hear
after
from you
that, same
quickly.
teaching. Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Raising standard. Thank you very much, KK. Your contribution was actually very deep, and it actually opens a lot of doors, especially for me to even say a lot of things about raising standard. The role of raising standard for children is actually divided into two, which is the teachers and the adult around the child. And as we all know that some of these children, they actually mimic some of us. What they see around us is what they will actually be thinking of implementing in the school or around them. And also having a direct contact with them as a parent, as teachers, they also see us as role model. And anything we actually advise them to do, they tend to put some of those things into practice. So for us to raise standard among some of those children, we ourselves must be a good role model. If you see what exactly is happening in the society right now, that every child wants to be an hip-hop artist, it is because some of those children, what they see around them are hip-hop artists. So who are those people start serving as role model that these children can actually mimic? So sometimes when you see the lives of somebody singing and smoking at the same time, this and that, some of them will actually want to practice some of those things. I'm appreciating for now that some of our broadcasting channel for now, they do ban some music that are not even meant to be shown on TV. And then I'm still seeing some that are still even showing on DSTV and more. But for us to raise standard from these students from my own angle, every teacher must be a role model of good character. We have the positive aspect of it and the negative aspects of it. You have to be able to control yourself emotionally, and more emotional intelligence actually very important. And also you have to make sure that as a teacher you have to manage your anger. Some of these students also I'm not talking about the deep standard for now, but I'm talking about the major one that can affect the deep anger, the deep standard. So because if you don't actually undo some of those ones, they may, no matter how skillful they are, how knowledgeable they are, those things may not actually show up. But the ones that are just tiny, the character, the value, the thing that they see, the practice may actually overshadow some of those things. So, and parents also have to make sure that anything that is going on in the school, they are being carried along so that they can actually continue with the education of the child. And it is not all about knowledge. Sometimes skill is one of the great things that every child needs to acquire for now. I want to appreciate Niger Kid, Miss Titi, for what she said, that she actually decided to encourage a child about recycling. Those are the major skill in the world, in time to come. Ability for you to recycle things around you, not just recycling of small things. There are so many angles of recycling that every child needs to even understand. What of creativity skills? What of artistic skill? What of even digital literacy? So for us to raise the standard of these children, it is beyond academics. It goes alongside all the creativity part of life, all the so many things, exposure to digital, to technology and more. So it is the role of teachers and the adults around the child that will determine the standard of the students. And everybody out there can be a role model, and I'm sure that we will surely try our best.
Thank you very much. So let's take this a step further. And I want us to look at the place of these two realities, where we talk about permission and projection. Permission and projection. Fabian rightfully said that there are two areas, that's from the teachers and from the parents as well. So how do we begin to raise standards from the place of permission? And that's really, not thinking that we're going too far, not thinking that, oh, these children, or, there's a lot of times that it seems like we are the ones that peg progress, peg exploration for the children. And then the projection, because raising standards, if I recall, like what we had yesterday, sometimes you need to place these students on platforms, raising standards, getting them to interact and compete with their counterparts across the world, across across the globe, across the continent, across the country, So that's projection. I think one of the ways to explore that, or one of the realities that we will find in raising standards, is to project these children, push them forward, and then, of course, give them permission to succeed, give them permission to explore. Um, of course, unfortunately, sometimes you hear about the insecurity and all those things. Children are not even allowed to stay on the streets any longer. Children are not allowed to experiment. We don't even get if at all, we take them to the beach. They cannot even go to play around the sand. We just keep them on one spot. The adventure in the children that we have today sometimes seems to be a bit hampered or hindered. What are your thoughts about this, Titi? And then I go to KK, permission and projection. I'll come back to Eben.
So, let me understand the question. That the parents giving the children permission, is that what you're saying?
Yes, the school system itself as well, the teachers themselves. Permission matters a lot. I recall one of the years we're organizing spelling bee competition, and one of the people that wanted to participate just said, I don't want my children to fumble. That's just not that they had the cost challenge. Not the students were super excited about the competition, but just the preference of that person. I don't want to risk them not succeeding. What if they don't come first? That's the kind of feedback, and sometimes no permission. Yeah.
Well, I think let me talk from a parent's perspective and talk from a school. With a school, from a parent's perspective, I think we need to realize, first of all, that failure is a very important part of life. And you need to let your children get familiar with it as early as possible. That's the first thing I would say. They need to fail, honestly. When my son gets overconfident and then he fails the next time around, I'm secretly very happy. I'm secretly very happy. Why? Because failure, brings about strength. Failure brings about discipline. Because sometimes what you find out is that you can get overconfident in your talent and not realize that there's a lot of work needed to do it. And I just feel that it's important, so they get to start managing their emotions, because that's what leads to a lot of depression later on. That thing of, I've failed, this person has made progress, and I'm not, so they need that exposure early. So I'm always like, go and try, because even children don't want to try things they feel that they won't excel in. But I'm like,
Yeah.
what, just give it a try, and I keep trying to tell them stories of their role model, that their role model fail. So my son is into football. I tell him that, did Ronaldo, there's a penalty shot that he didn't get, there's a goal that he missed, to let them know that everybody fails. There's nobody that gets it all the time. Even their teams that they like, I'm like, did they win every championship? Did they win every game? Because I let them know that it's a normal part of life. They see them, the footballers crying, so let them know that it's a normal part of life. I said, but what happens? They go back, they re-strategize. So it's something that is very important. Your child must, honestly, it's really very important, because that's how life is. People can hear success stories, but you need to go to behind those success stories and realize that somewhere along the line there were falls that these people got up for. So it's important that you expose your children, let them know that failure is part, that they will succeed. They might not always succeed, but they need to learn to stand up and go ahead. So when the child is worried, I'm like, just expose them to so many things. I think that's what I would tell parents out there listening. And then for schools, it's okay. I understand. You see, when you are what your salt, it doesn't matter that you didn't do well at one event. Is how do you go back and say, you know what, the next time around, we know what we need to do to be better. But don't deprive the children of trying, succeeding, or failing, or crying and standing up, to succeed again. It's really a very important um, process of a child's development. That cycle of nobody's ever on top all the time. It's just unreal to believe that. So it's important that we expose them to various things. So you can be the king in this your little kingdom. When you go to another kingdom and find out that, oh
You
boy,
discover.
and that's what I'm telling you. I know someone that he was so hot in his school, now went to another school, and man, the thing was too much for him to bear. That life is always going to be like that. So it's for you to step back and say, okay, so I was hot in the other school, now I've met my match here. What do I need to do? It's very important. So I think KK is back, so I will just let her also add to this.
All right.
The first thing that I would like to contribute is that standards must be visible to be attainable. If the standards are not visible, then they will not be attainable, both for children and for adults. But we're looking primarily at students right now. So the standards need to be visible. And it's not just saying that this is what you need to do. It's actually showing the students, like Titi has said, helping them understand that, you know what, nobody wants you to fail, but if you do fail this one time, then how do you move towards not failing another time, right? So when parents say things like, I was always first in my class, I was always first in my class, sometimes that alone in itself is a problem. Because you're saying you were first in your class, but you're not actually telling your children what you did to be first. And the fact that, like Titi said, you were not first all the time, and there were times where you were not first. So the first thing is that the children need to understand that, look, where I need to go, I need to work at it. Nothing great comes out of the place of comfort zones, and a lot of times we like to cocoon, not just as adults, but even as children, we like to keep them in a cocoon. Like Rotimi said, how many children are not around on outside anymore? I mean, when I was young, we cooked leaves and ate them, and that helps us. That's creativity, that's thinking, right? That's being innovative. And it was nice. We tell my mother, it's nice, it's drawing, it's like your okra. And then when there was no money in the house, we would remind her that when we were cooking outside, the leaf was drawing. So we have garri and we cook that food, and for us, that's how we grew up, right? But right now, none of those things are happening. I know we're in a different age. Technology is the order of the day. But even then, how much are we actually allowing these children to explore by themselves? And that's something that is so important. We need to create and curate. So curate experiences that actually lead to personal development. But we're not doing that. We're not doing that in our homes, not as much. We're not doing that in schools, not as much as well, because everybody is putting out the highlights. Oh, this school did well in this tech competition. This school did well in this place. This person did this. This person did that. It's all about the highlights. And the minute we keep putting those highlights out there, then the actual work, the actual effort is not going to be, nobody's going to see it. And so nobody actually, look, everybody needs help. Everybody needs support at one time or the other. And we need to understand the process of perfection. We need to attain it. We need to go work systematically towards it. And everybody needs to understand. And so the students need to know, even in the classroom, how visible is the curriculum outcomes, the learning outcomes for the children. We need to make these things visible. And then we need to actually then empower the children with tools that help them get there. We were doing, because we have a lot of research-based work that we do in school. And sometimes we have some parents say, oh, but I don't want my child on the internet. And I'm like, are you joking? This is 1920. Come on. You don't want your child on the internet. What else can you do? So what some of the parents do is, and that's advice that we give them, okay, we know you don't want your child on the internet. So can you download these research pages for them and then cut off the internet so that they can at least go to those research pages and take out the data that they need? So we need to, the children are not glass. Yes, they're fragile, but they're not glass. They're not going to break, and if we keep cocooning them like this, when they then get to a place where they actually have to face failure, they can't contend with it because they haven't developed the resilience to cope with it. So we must consciously build resilience in our children via visible standards and via experiences that have been curated to make them stronger individuals for themselves. Another thing is that how much do these children even, I mean, even me as an adult, when did I know myself? When did I realize what I wanted to do, right? But a lot of these children right now are telling you that it's the things that they want to be, the things that they want to do. So we need to encourage those sort of student participation in our classrooms, in our homes. They need to understand that they are decision makers, and they will be allowed via project-based teaching to actually begin to make these decisions, begin to see that they can be solutions to somebody else's problem. But the minute we keep dumping them down and keep putting them in a box and keep feeling like we don't have space yet in the community for a child's thinking, then there will be a problem. And that's something that I feel really needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I like what you said, KK. But we need people to understand that we're not just saying this out of passion. A lot of work that we're doing as educators actually might just be messed up and truncated by the reality of what we just talked about. Projection and permission, they go together, right? They go together. Even if you look at the skills that we're talking about, the teacher training, the teacher development that we've been shouting about, number one, there has to be an element of projection. The level of success story and success rate is what will lead to adoption. There has to be permission. Think about how many educators get the privilege to even get empowered, and then they get back to the school and they get disempowered just because what they've learned, there has been no permission for them to internalize, integrate into the system. So sometimes you hear people tell you that, look, it's not us that need the training. It's the people above us that need to train, because those are people that will implement, and this is coming straight down to the students. We need to understand that the quality of students is in consonance with the standards we place for the students. And standards are not just requirement born out of discipline. You must not do this. It's not a do and don't. It's a reality that we want to raise. We want to raise the quality. We want to decrease lack of quality. These are things that I think that we need to get people out there to recognize, right? To recognize raising standards for our students is actually also what will make attractive in terms of our school system. By the time we see the quality of what comes out, of course, definitely, it will also have its positive impact on the school system in itself. So as we try to bring this to a close, what would you say should be our agenda and action points going forward, especially when we look at it, we're in a new semester, we're in a new session, we're in a new term, and we're in a new normal. What should we do to make things different in raising standards for our students?
I mean, that has so many different facets. It's dizzying just thinking about it, but the first thing I'd say is, what do you want to be known for? When you understand what you want to be known for, then it's easy to go from there. And again, for example, I want to have a school where the students are not afraid to speak their minds. The students understand that change must come, but there must be a catalyst for it. And they're not afraid to be those catalysts. They're not afraid to say things, even if they're saying the wrong thing. They're not answering the question correctly, but they're so confident in what they're saying. You're wondering, do you realize that you're wrong at all? That sense of self needs to be something that we need to amplify. The students need to understand that, look, I am not just a student. I am a human being, and I have the ability to contribute my quota. Yes, you might not give me permission, but I can create experiences such that you do not have a choice but to give me the permission that I desire. And that's something that we can do from our classrooms, from our homes. It's increasingly difficult when teachers don't understand what they need to be doing, when they're not, you have somebody who has ideas about how they want to run their schools, their classrooms. And so even when you have fantastic solutions or fantastic ideas, they are unheard. I know it can be very frustrating. But at the end of the day, we owe it, it's our duty, to be honest with you, it's our deep responsibility to raise students who understand that they can become the standard, and not just any wishy-washy standard, but that they can hold themselves in the highest regard and move everybody within their circle to that high regard, right? But what we find a lot of times is we find the cleverest person, or the person who is the most vocal in the classroom, and that becomes the standard. That shouldn't be the standard. We need to understand, where are we internationally? Where are we? What are our limitations right now? And how can we, with a step-by-step guide, move every single child towards that place by themselves, because they have decided within them to do that. If not, you're just pushing the child until something breaks on the inside of that child, where they understand that, you know what, I can truly do this. The change that we need to see within our classrooms with those children is not going to come as smoothly as we hope that it is. So yes, children need to first of all understand their place. They need to understand that they're important enough to make their voices heard. So that's where I will start from.
I like that. How about Titi? What do you have to say to that?
I think that as parents, starting at, I'll always talk as, as parents, we need to realize that we need to change our standards in terms of what we're expecting. It's not about, oh, how much knowledge can my child recite? It's really about what can they do with the knowledge. So they are learning something in school. What can they do? They're learning creative writing. What's the level of creativity and originality that is in the writing? Not so much that all the writing makes sense, but you know how it is when you see an original creative writing, you almost want to laugh, because just the craziness of the thinking is is the craziness of the person's imagination, and that's really what you want. So it's not that, oh, my child is top in maths. Is that, can he really appreciate what the maths is all about? It's not that, oh, science, they can read the biggest words. Do they understand the meaning of these words? So anytime my son is learning something and I'm like, but do you know what this is? Like, no. I'm like, no, it's not about learning the words. It's really more about using. So we need to change that standard mindset of what real quality education is. And I say, look at the people that have succeeded now. You realize that they succeeded not because they were professors, PhDs, had all A stars, but they succeeded now because they were able to solve problems. They were able to solve problems. That's really the new currency. And so you must continue to look for ways to encourage your child to think out of the box, not necessarily to follow the norm, but to think out of the box, see problems constantly. And that means that you must allow them to solve problems. So when my children come to me, and they are fighting, I have this rule that if I solve your problem, you forfeit 30 minutes of TV. But if you solve your problem, then that's fine. So every time they come to me, and they start this, oh, mommy, I want to report. I'm like, our deal. Do you want me to solve the problem? I'm telling you, almost 99% of the time they go back. They say, no, come. Let's go and solve their problem. And they later come back and are proud to tell me, oh, we solved it amongst ourselves. That's what you want. There will always be friction with people, but you need to learn how to solve it. So I think that's really what I would encourage everybody. Let's go and study and say these are the 21st century skills. Go and understand what you need to do to help them increasingly acquire these skills. To also question your school in telling them, are you helping my child acquire these important skills in the way you teach? So the curriculum is fine, but it's how is it taught to encourage this level of the skill? I think that's where I would leave it for now.
Okay, so Titi, can you help us with this?
So Chinom, so thank you for joining us, because this is Even I had the difficulty joining. So for anybody joining us today, thank you very much. So we're happy to have it. So it's saying, for me, raising standards for students will push the bright ones to work harder, but the dull ones might tend to lose hope or relax. To be able to achieve positive outcome all throughout while trying to raise standards for students, I think we should be able to I think there should be a structure that will enable academic weak students to pick up and also to be able to encourage those already thriving. So you see, what we are saying is that standard is not academics. Standard is not, you see, that's really the shift. It's not about academics. It could be in art, it could be in creative writing, it could even be in extracurricular. You're telling people that we don't all have to be your best. That's what I'm saying, that the standards is changing. It's not about academics anymore. It's about that each of us, each child that you're seeing, and
More than that.
it's more than that. There's some people that in the class, they're not the brilliant one, but they're the ones that they know how to just ask you those questions that just get you off guard. So what you're telling that child is that, do you know what? I see the life of a journalist in you, because while we are all thinking to the left, you are the one that can make us just say, can you take a glance at the right? So what's now important in raising the standard is how each teacher is searching each student to see what is that thing that they have, and how do I use leveraging on that thing, help them develop the skills that we're talking about. So it could be anything. Children are, even their art. The art is not the one that, we now say, draw within the line. Yes, it's good for fine motor skill, but art has changed. When you see some expressive art, you're like, oh boy, I don't understand them, but this is beautiful. I'm telling you, there's some you see, you say, and that's what I'm saying, is a mindset shift. It's not really about, is my child getting tough? Some people, why is it that this award my child is getting for well-behaved? Well-behaved is a good thing. So what you need to say, do you know what? It's actually a good thing. So you're saying, how do we channel this? What that shows that is your child has discipline. Your child knows how to do self-control. When your child wins for well-behaved, and that discipline, you're saying, how can I channel it? Because most children are not well-behaved, honestly. The day my son, I said, the day they give you well-behaved, I will be somersaulting and so, but what that meant is that that's fine. It's fine. It's fine for you to be one of those. But each person is a beautiful butterfly. We don't all look the same. It's not about academic excellence anymore.
No.
It's about various forms of expression. As long as
it's several.
Each child is able to demonstrate those 25-20 skills, which is really more. Can the person in their own area solve problems? Can they think critically? Can they collaborate with other people? Do you understand? Can they communicate? Those are what you need. Look at all the things, all the forms of expressions that is happening even under this EndSARS. It's been driven by communication. People are communicating in different ways. Look at some people are doing art. While some people were communicating with their voice, some people are there drawing art. Some people are there taking, photographs. Some people are there is the way they are writing, the way they are just analyzing the thing, All this is communication, and it's wrong to say that the people that are doing the writing ones are academically better than the person that is drawing it or taking pictures, to express it. So we have to change our mindset. There are now different forms of expression. Some people are not academically sound, but they know how to develop apps to express those things. It's changing, and that's the new standard that we need to begin to push. I think our time is up. This is going to be a sober morning. But I'm happy for this.
So I just wanted to add that. Yes, absolutely. I wanted to quickly add that in the classroom and amongst children and adults, there are several intelligences that you find, multiple intelligences, and we cannot hold one particular type of intelligence above all the others. All intelligences are important. All intelligences are vital. So we need to, in raising standards, we must know what these intelligences are and which one each child actually most has, and how can we help the child actually be the best that they can be all the time, and help them be confident and happy in themselves, because that's the only place where you're actually free to then express yourself. Thanks.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much, KK. I know it took a lot to get you online today. Thank you, Titi. Thank you, everyone that joined. And this is the reality and the beauty of life. That the power of consistency. It's consistency that gives you a name. And as we march forward, as we do the right thing, the test for development. We've talked about regulators needing to raise standards for them. We talked about raising standards for teachers. And now we talked about raising standards for students. And I want to end by saying this. Standards are a true representation of the future. And if anything is going to sustain itself, anything is going to last, then there must be standards that will uphold it. Standards are like structure that birth the system. And I'm sure you've learned something today. I'm sure you heard something today. And I want you to take that and commit to it, to do something with what you've learned. Listen to the analysts, listen and read through the comments, and reflectively position yourself to ensure that a lot of our students become better because they deserve better. Not just because they desire to be better, but they deserve better. And this show is dedicated to everyone out there who looks forward to a deserving country, not just a desired country, but a deserving country. And we believe that everything will be fine, our strength will be restored, our joy will be restored, and we'll move on better together. So, on that note, I would say what we usually say, but with a different tonality in mind, that go make it a great morning. We'll make it a great afternoon. We'll make it a great night, because it's always a great day and always a great morning on the Good Morning Education Show. We love you. See you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.